Hey guys, thanks for stopping back to the channel. We're going to take a detailed look at the Canyon Exceed CF7 in just a second here. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a moment to discuss the decision making and bike buying process for this bike. So my channel is fat bike and adventure bike based and will continue to be. However, I have been looking for a bike that can be kind of a mixed use bike. So do some pavement, do some gravel and dirt road, even do some mild flowy single track. I prefer the feel of a hardtail flat bar bike compared to a drop bar bike. So I really wasn't in the market for another drop bar bike and was looking at a carbon hardtail that was reasonably priced that can kind of do all those things. So over the last year, I have been looking and shopping and browsing at a number of carbon hardtail bikes that were in that just over $2,000 range, which is about as cheap as they get. I've been looking at the Trek Pro Caliber, the Niner Air 9 RDO, and the BMC two-stroke, and a few others as well. I did start by looking and inquiring on the Trek and the BMC, and every place I called and talked to, locally and beyond, all told me 2022 would be the soonest we'd be seeing new bikes from them. The Niner did remain a possibility. However, the cheapest version of that bike is actually on the pricier side. It's actually closer to $3,000 than $2,000. And of course, Canyon was another one of the ones I was looking at. And I've always been a huge fan of Canyon bikes, the aesthetics of their bikes, and that's across all the ranges of the bikes they sell. And the Canyon Exceed was updated recently in the last year or so. And it is a great looking bike. So just looking on their website, they actually had stock, quote unquote, coming soon. So I was watching it every day or so. I would check it and see what the status was. The Canyon Exceed CF7, like I said, is a great looking bike. I really like the color. It was priced right at right about $2,200. And most importantly, stock did come available, so I didn't waste any time. I just jumped right in and ordered it. So Canyon is a direct-to-consumer brand, which means you order directly from Canyon. The online ordering process was about as easy as it gets. It was simply just clicking a few drop downs and boxes on the bike you want, the size you want, entering your shipping and payment information in, and that was it. It literally took just a few minutes to order the bike. I ordered it on a Thursday, and I actually had the bike in my possession the following Wednesday. So as you may have seen in the unboxing and build video that I did, and if you didn't see that, I will link that down below. The process to unboxing the bike and putting it together and getting it ready to ride is about as straightforward and easy as it gets. And one other thing that I did briefly show in that prior video, but I wanted to show in a little more detail here, is what they give you with the bike to actually make sure you can get it ready to ride. So the first thing to come out of the bike box is the starter box. And upon opening that, the first thing you'll see is that there are several manuals in there. So some are specific to the Exceed and the assembly process. And then there's some general information as well. They also have a couple little nylon storage type bags you could use for whatever you choose. And you also get the bolts for the water bottle holders and some stickers and some other accessory information. Being a carbon bike, torque specs are important, and I was really impressed to see that they actually send you little torque wrenches, which I've never really used this style before. I do have a proper high quality torque wrench for my bikes, but thought these were cool little tools, again, just to make sure you get the bike together and get it torqued appropriately. And then lastly, and most impressively, is they actually send you a quality shock pump, which again, their goal is to make sure you can ride the bike day one, and the last thing you want to do is not be able to ride it because the air in the shock is not appropriate. Okay, so let's get on and look at the bike in detail. Okay guys, finally looking at the bike, I just wanted to go through some of the specifics on the build spec. So this is obviously a pure cross-country race bike. It is a hardtail 29er, 100 millimeters of travel in the front. This frame was just redesigned in the last year. There are 3 different levels of carbon used. There's the CFR, which is the high-end version, the SLX, which is the midline, and then the CF, which is what this version is here. All 3 frames do use the exact same mold, so they're exactly the same in appearance. However, the higher end variants do use a different carbon layout, which mainly is there just to make the bikes lighter. So let's zoom in and focus on the frame for a little bit. It does have a nice stout head tube. The top tube is quite wide, but is fairly thin. The down tube is primarily round in shape, but it is a nice size, so you have a good stiff pedaling platform. Good robust bottom bracket. The seat tube appears to be completely round, and it does have some reinforcing here where the seat enters. It is interesting how the seat stays come up and transition into the seat tube and the top tube. Nice robust area. One thing you will notice is there is no seat tube collar on top. Usually Most bikes right here is where you'll have a collar with a bolt or a quick release to actuate, set your seat height and lock it down. There may be other bikes like this, but this is the first bike I've seen that uses this style. Basically, you set your seat height and then you just tighten that bolt to 2.5 nanometers. And then there's a mechanism in there that basically just like a wedge-shaped mechanism that clamps down and holds it. So I'll be curious to see how that works out long term. But it's an interesting design. Definitely looks clean. I suspect it might be lighter too. And then just to kind of finish up, chain stays are fairly robust, and you do have some, metal protection there from the chain ring. So I think a stunning looking frame personally, and I'll be real curious to get it out and see how it rides. One of the features this bike has, other bikes have it too, but I just wanted to point out, is there is a lock, like a stop in the head tube. It prevents the front bars and front wheel from spinning around completely and potentially damaging the frame and pulling out your cables. So I'll just kind of show you real quick that that's as far as it goes right there. So that's kind of a nice feature, and definitely glad to have that on the bike. And just back to the frame for a second, as far as the geometry per the redesign, they did modernize it slightly. Now, they weren't drastic changes. It does have a 69-degree head tube angle, which again is not by modern standards in any way, shape, or form slack, but for a pure cross-country bike, that's pretty good. They also lengthened the top tube by about 10 millimeters, and they shortened up the chain stays by about 2 millimeters. Again, not drastic changes, they are slight, but although the numbers were moved per the trends, the current trends of, a little slacker, a little longer up top, and then a little shorter at the back end to improve trail worthiness just a little bit. This bike is sitting at right about 27 pounds as it sits. I do have the tubes in the tires still. I will have it set up tubeless. So after I get bottle cages on, set it up tubeless, things like that, I'll do an updated weight on it and see where we're at. Most of my upgrade money this year is going to be going into the fat bikes, but I might look to do a few things to this down the road as time goes on. One of the aspects that really helps this frame look really attractive and clean is that all of the cables are internally mounted. On the cockpit, they come in right through the head tube there. And you'll get a better look at that when I flip the bike around. And then on both chain stays, they come out, one for the brake, and then the one for the drivetrain comes out just under there. So completely clean. Not necessarily the easiest bike to set up, but fortunately it came already routed, so it wasn't a factor, but it definitely keeps the bike looking really clean. Some of the higher spec bikes do come with a dropper seat post from the factory. Mine does not have that. May look at one down the road, not really a priority right now for this bike for what I'll be using it for, but there's no mounting down in the seat tube, but you can run it through the frame, being a carbon frame, and they actually do have extra space right here. It's hard to see, but they actually have extra space where you could run another cable out, so it does have that capability. So talking about components, we're going to start with the front fork because it was a really pleasant surprise. On the website, this bike is listed as coming with a RockShox Recon RL fork, but to my pleasant surprise, when I pulled it out of the box, the first thing I noticed was this bike came with a Reba, which is at least 2, maybe 3 steps up in the RockShox range. So it really does amount to a significant upgrade for this bike. I've never actually used a Reba before, but everything I've heard about it, it's a really good solid fork. And it's probably not something I would even consider upgrading, certainly anytime soon. But I'm really excited to get it out and give it a go and see how it actually performs. So I don't know if this was just a case of they made the upgrade and didn't update the website, or if it's the result of the serious supply chain issues we're still seeing in the bike industry. Maybe they didn't have the Recon available, had access to the Reba, wanted to ship bikes, so maybe they just kind of ate the difference on the cost and spec'd out the Reba so they could get the bike together and get them out the door. Either way, it's really awesome to get this fork over the Recon, and a real nice surprise. As far as the fork goes, it's pretty much got your standard spec for a cross-country race bike. Again, 100mm travel, 32mm stanchions. The Reba does share some of the parts with the higher level SID forks. I do like that it does have the indicator on your sag and has very clear markings, so it makes setting the sag a lot easier. And then the other feature it has that I've not used is it has a remote lockout, which you can see it's right here, and then there's actually a lockout for it there. So that'll be something interesting to try. as far as having to switch for it. So just to run through some of the other parts spec of the bike, this is one of the most consistently comprehensive spec bikes I've ever seen. So just to kind of run through the bars and the stem, the seat post, and the wheels, and then the pedals that I added are all race face. I've used their parts on a number of my other bikes and I've always been very satisfied. These race face wheels, they're the AR25. I've never used them before. Interesting to try them out. They are tubeless capable, so like I said, I will get this bike set up tubeless, and interesting to see how they feel and how they perform. The next thing I want to cover as far as the part spec are the tires, which we have Maxxis tires front and rear. On the front we have the Icon, which is 29 by 2.35. It is 120 TPI, which is great. That's, you know, high thread count tire, and it is tubeless ready, which is great to see. Tread pattern looks really good on this. Nice volume for a cross-country bike. It should give nice grip, and it should roll fairly quickly. And on the rear is again a Maxxis Aspen, which I've never used before. It's a little bit smaller, 29 by 2.5. Again, 120 TPI, so a nice high thread count tire, and is tubeless ready. So definitely really curious to see how this tire does for traction, how fast it rolls. Looks like it'll be very fast rolling, and we'll be curious to see how durable they are, especially once I get them set up tubeless. If the bike rides stiff, which I think it may, I might look to actually put an Icon also on the rear, give it a little more volume, but that's yet to be determined. Next up on the part spec side, we're going to talk about the brakes and the drivetrain. So starting with the drivetrain, since the bike is facing this direction, it looks like everything is pretty much SRAM NX, so there's the shifter. And it is SRAM NX, it's 1x12. It's got a 32 tooth front chainring, an 11 to 50 12-speed cassette in the rear, and the NX derailleur. I think the gear range on this cassette is 455%, so it should be pretty solid. The bottom bracket is SRAM as well, as you can see right there. And then the cranks are the true Bativ. So I don't really have a preference between SRAM and Shimano drivetrains. Most of my drivetrains are Shimano and I'm satisfied with them. Excited to try the SRAM and see if I notice any major difference. I have a little bit of experience with other SRAM bits on some of my other bikes, but this will be the first SRAM Eagle drivetrain I'll own. So I'll be curious to compare it to like my 12-speed SLX. The one thing I do have as a concern is the NX derailleur not having a clutch lockout, so we'll see how that does, especially when I do some more mild single track riding. Drivetrain definitely looks great. I know it'll perform well as far as shifting goes. I've heard nobody say anything bad about it. No real concerns on that aspect. So we're going to flip the bike over and take a look at the brakes. Okay, so here's the non-drive side of the bike. So before we look at the brakes, just kind of show you the frame from this side. Definitely nice and clean. I don't think I mentioned, but the bottom bracket is press fit, so just something of note, not a big deal. Again, nice, robust bottom bracket. So looking at the brakes, again, they are SRAM Level T. I've never used SRAM brakes before, so interested to try them out. I know a lot of people seem to kind of fall in one camp between Shimano and SRAM on brakes. I'll be curious to try these brakes out and see how they do. The front rotor size is 180 millimeters. It is center lock, not 6-bolt. So it'll be my first experience with center lock rotors. They're probably not as common or popular as the 6-bolt, but I think from what I'm hearing, it seems like a lot of people like them because they seem to be easier to deal with. You don't have to, have 6 bolts to be concerned with. Probably more secure. And then in the back, there's a 160 millimeter rotor. And there's a little better look at that. The front has the standard RockShox quick release through axle. The rear has Canyon's, they call it a Quixel. So it's a really ingenious lever design. You grab this and pull it out, and then now you unthread it just like a normal through axle. So it's a really cool setup. You don't have the quick release kind of hanging out there all the time, but that's a pretty cool design. So in closing, I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing in the bike. Really impressed with the touches that went into the buying process of the bike. It was about as quick and easy and painless as you can get. Even though my channel is fat bike focused and I will be riding most of my miles on fat bikes like I have been, it is nice to have something a little bit different and something that can do a little bit different things. and this bike will fill that niche nicely, I hope. So thanks for taking the time to have a closer look at the Canyon CF7. Lots more to come with fat bike and adventure biking, and I'll even be working in some videos with this, including some first ride and some review. And if you're interested in following along on all my bike-based adventures for the year, definitely subscribe to the channel. Again, lots coming, lots in the works. Thanks.